This is the Misdirected Mark Podcast, a podcast about gaming, game mastering, and entertaining you, our listeners. We are explicit, you have been warned, and I'd like to thank Mike Willard for letting us use his music on our show. Now let's pick up those mics and get on with this thing.
I think the music's over because I'm not wearing headphones today.
The music is over.
Fantastic. Well, we brought Bob back, but he came back in a different body.
Well, you cast reincarnation, and based on your roll, he came back as a skunk.
It was the dice, man. But really, if you think about it, it's not too far off because he does spend a lot of time in the Bobnasium.
He does kind of stink.
I'm back.
Oh, hey, you're human.
And you don't smell like a skunk. That's an improvement.
Yeah, it was unpleasant, so I went back in time to try and fix it.
So, how is your second life going?
Yeah, well, first I had a really good roll and I won the lottery.
Oh my god, that's amazing! So does that mean we have enough money to just be full-time game designers now?
Yeah, not so much.
Oh no, what did you roll next?
Well, after I won the lottery, I made a roll that saw that I invested in Apple and I made even more money.
Excellent.
That sounds amazing.
But then my next roll, because I was still a skunk, I had to hire human pawns to do all my investing for me.
That must have been like chart 17-A.
Yeah,
Yep,
and
yep.
all of those human pawns, they got a cut.
Oh.
But
Yeah.
you were invested in Apple. You should probably still have a ton of money, right?
Yeah, well, the next roll, I had my human pawns find me a witch to try and get my new body back.
Oh, because that was chart 23F, because that's
That
the chart that
cost a
modifies you from one thing to another.
butt ton of money.
Yeah.
At that point, I was down to about half my investments. And then the next roll, the witch said she'd give me my body back if I give her the rest of my material wealth.
I mean, that seems fair, right?
I mean, I'm back.
He's back.
Yeah, so instead of 5,000 gold pieces in diamond dust, you had to trade away 20% share in Apple.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a fair trade.
Well,
I don't know. Skunk
Yeah.
skunk and 20% of Apple or human being?
I don't know. They would have eventually come up with like the eye skunk or something for it to talk. And with that, this is the 383rd episode of the Misdirected Mark Podcast, where tonight we will be talking about Lifepath mechanics.
What? Yes.
I know, people are like, the fuck is Lifepath mechanics? That's right, there's like 6 of you who know,
that's right.
and most of you play Traveler.
Most. Probably all. Oh, somebody's playing
No,
Burning
there's
Wheel.
some Cyberpunk.
Someone's playing Burning Wheel, too.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
somebody's
there's
playing-
some CP
If
people.
Avi's listening, Avi's like, of course Lifepath.
V.
Right.
V. All right. Well, with that, let's do one thing, right?
One
Phil,
thing.
Why don't you tell me about your one thing?
My one thing this past week, my one thing is that we are wrapping up the Avalon Kickstarter. So this past week has been this past week has been wrapping up things for me. The Avalon Kickstarter is wrapping up this week, right? I'm finishing off sending out the POD coupons, and then I'm going to do a little lessons learned post for everybody. And on top of that, my 13th month high priority project also wrapped last week. So like I'm I'm getting rid of like 2 of my biggest projects, one outside of work and one in work. After what has been basically, they both started at almost the same time. In like 13 months, I've completed my parts on both of them, and I get to shut down both of those projects, and I'm very much looking forward to it. It'll be weird not sending out a weekly update for the first time next week, the first time in a year and a half, I think.
Yeah.
Right? It'll have been 18 months of me sending out weekly updates for various Kickstarters, so that'll be odd. It'll and it'll all be shut down.
You can have like 3 or 4 months off, and then we'll
Right?
do it
Just
again.
do it again.
Plus, it's almost Christmas, so you're about to be wrapping presents, too.
I'm wrapping everything.
You gonna sing us a Christmas rap now?
Oh yeah. Bah humbug, and that's a sorry.
Is that a thing?
Yeah, Christmas wrapping by the waitresses?
Yeah.
Can you do it?
No, not really.
Oh, that's too bad.
I don't remember most
I
of
would
the
have been
lyrics.
so
Merry
impressed,
Christmas.
Phil.
Merry
So
Christmas.
impressed.
No, I know like parts of it. I can't do the whole thing. Anyway.
That's fine.
But yeah, so Avalon's shutting down, which also marks that in 2 years we have successfully ran and completed 2 Kickstarters as Encoded.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's too shabby. Like, I think like we did an okay job we delivered
We did not suck.
no, we delivered the whole book. I mean, the book's been done for a while actually.
Yeah.
We've been actually just chasing the
stretch goals.
stretch goals. In fact, we only decided at the end of the campaign to make them into a book. So we just we gave ourselves extra work.
It's a nice thing. I thought it was a nice thing to do for the
No, it's totally awesome. The
backers.
book's a cool little companion to go along with the.
And now those PDFs that are coming out of the book, because they're in sections, the PDF
Yes.
is a bunch. The book is a bunch of sections, are starting to pop up on DriveThru.
Yeah. So it's really good. We're going to end out this year with all of our Kickstarters closed, and yeah, it was good. I mean, we'll talk about it for the end of the year episode in 2 weeks, but Encoded has never had a year this profitable before.
It was a good year.
It hasn't sucked.
It was a really good year.
We made a lot of fun stuff. I mean, we created a lot of interesting
We did.
things.
We created a lot of stuff. We did a bunch of stuff
As
this
a
year.
publisher, a bunch of things came out, which was really neat. Right? Like
Yeah.
some bundles that we were in. There's an audiobook of Never Unprepared. I mean,
The
we'll talk
quick-
about it.
yeah,
we
we'll
can
talk about it in
next
2 weeks.
week.
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
2 weeks. We're going to talk about that for the end of the year show.
New Year's Eve show. By the way, before we get into my one thing, I suppose I'll go next.
Yeah.
Our New Year's Eve show is starting at 10 p.m. and we're going till 12:30.
Yeah, we're gonna post this everywhere, and we'll remind you all. We are hoping that if you are available, you'll tune us in. And for some of you, if you have decent bandwidth and a mic and a camera, we're going to be hosting people on the show.
I'm going to play producer that evening, and I'll have a slightly different setup for the show so that I can actually bring people in while Phil and Bob are on camera, and I'll be off camera chatting with people, getting them all set up.
And we're going to be able to
as
bring
guests.
people in on Zoom, and put them
Yep.
on the screen, right?
So if you want to be on the show, if you were a loyal patron or a friend of ours or a game designer that wants to come on and just talk about your year, what's going on with you, or some game design stuff, or gaming experience that you've had, we'd love to hear from you.
Yeah. All we're asking is you need some bandwidth, preferably a camera. We'd like to see you, if possible, and definitely a mic, decent enough mic. It could be your gaming. It could be your gaming head.
Headsets are perfectly
Yeah.
fine.
It just not your not the mic on your laptop that picks up everything else in the room, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we'll also be, I think, putting a call out for some topics because we're going to talk about some year in review stuff, but we also want to answer kind of like when we do with pandas with the grab bag. We're gonna do
we'll
a
do some short
misdirected.
form
I could
topics.
easily come up with a list of topics if we need them, but we'd
Yeah,
rather hear from you
yeah,
folks.
Exactly. Plus, I can also raid the pandas grab bag list.
Pandas grab bag
Rate the
list.
pandas grab bag list.
I mean, we could just do 20 minutes of pandas too, if Sunday wants to pop on. Then I
Yeah,
can go-
absolutely.
Then I can go walk away for a while.
Yeah.
Little special edition Panda Mayhem.
Pandas on New Year's. It's a black and white New Year's.
Black and white and red all over.
Oh, they must have fallen down. What's next?
Bob's,
Me, my one thing.
Yeah,
I didn't
yeah.
talk about it yet.
Yeah, you didn't segue
So
into
I played a whole bunch of Eberron this past
Yeah,
week.
you
It
did.
was a lot
All of the
fun.
Eberron.
Yeah, all of the Eberron. So Bob joined our Eberron game that's every other week on Fridays. That's with my lovely partner Jennifer and Jerry Myers and Mark Napick, former host of the show. It's a fun group, and we had a very interesting experience because we integrated Bob's character rather quickly and pretty efficiently and smoothly.
That's awesome.
It was a fun little group exercise for how do you fit into the story? Because at first we didn't have any idea how we fit into the story because we didn't talk about it a ton beforehand. Because I hate doing that over text and online.
Yeah.
I really do. It's just harder for me to do that because it's easier to bounce ideas back and forth for me when I'm talking to somebody.
Sure.
Yeah. But it went really well. And then on Sunday we played Savage Worlds Eberron, Christian Sexy Voice Serrano's Savage Eberron.
I mean, that's just the thing.
So we're playing through the original 3.5 campaign that came out, those books.
Oh yeah.
I forgot that I had read some of those adventures.
Oops. Starting to recognize some of them.
Well, yeah, because I'm not trying to spoil anything or whatnot, but we ran into the guy who has the cart, the elemental cart that sinks into the ground and can move along. I love that. I love Eberron for stuff like
Sure.
that. It's really
That's
fun.
the kind of cool magic stuff I love about Eberron.
Sorry.
But we had some fun character interactions and chats because two of the characters, me and Jen, are both mercenaries. I'm from House Deneth and she's not from House Deneth. So,
Right.
So like, why are you a mercenary compared to why I'm a mercenary? Because I have the flaw in Savage Worlds of being bound. I'm bound to the house. Like I'm honorable to the house, or like I have a sense of honor.
Yeah,
and
because you're part of the house.
Yeah, I have a sense of honor, but I also have that flaw that makes you like you have to like you're restricted by your house and like what they need you to do. Obligation. That's what it is.
That is a word.
Yeah. Well, the obligation is the name of the flaw, if I remember correctly. But that's it's fun to play that out, like, and see how those different ideologies like kind of compare and contrast. Plus, there's a couple of Warforged, but one of them wasn't there for the game, which is too bad because that Warforged is hilarious. But yeah, that was my week. What about you, Bob?
So I'm going to continue on with the Eberron flavor because I'm going to talk a little bit more about my integration into your campaign, and you should check in with the chat room while I do. So that was the smoothest integration into a long-running campaign that I have ever been witness to. These guys have been playing for, I don't know, like 20 sessions, 20 like plus. Like you've been playing a long time with this game.
Which one? This? Oh, it's
Yeah.
that was session 15.
That was 14 sessions before I came in. And I decided that I wanted to play a warlock, and I picked the Archfey patron and left it at that. I'm not going to define the patron. I'm not going to define like, how that all came about. I'm just going to leave it there so that we can kind of talk about it and riff on it and see where we want to use that to bring it in, to bring the character into the campaign. And after a quick back and forth and some really fun, like holy cow, that's awesome moments, my character snapped in like a puzzle piece and grafted onto this campaign like it was there all along, and we just hadn't gotten to him yet. It was great. So it made me feel like I was part of the group already, which even though I know the people and we're all friends, coming in as the new person, sometimes, you can feel like the outsider because, you're just joining up.
Sure, absolutely.
But it made me feel like I was already part of the group, and the camaraderie picked up really quick. So yeah, it was super smooth, and I'm glad that I made the choices that I made, and that we decided to go where we went, because it was really, really cool.
Sweet. That sounds very awesome.
Yeah. So that was my one thing.
Yeah. Cool. Then why don't you and I kick into the announcements?
Well, I will go there too.
Oh.
Give me the puck.
You don't want this puck. It's not a normal bounty. She's the most dangerous mercenary in the galaxy.
I really don't care. Give me the puck.
Fine. Take it. But trust me, you won't find her. Or worse, perhaps you will.
Blast off for adventure with Infinite Galaxies.
Are you ready for some sci-fi action adventure? Robots that must be hunted down, aliens that must be shot, laser guns that must be fired, starships that must be flown all throughout the galaxy. You can have all of this, and more can be yours unless I find you first.
Infinite Galaxies is powered by the Apocalypse game based on favorites like Dungeon World and Apocalypse World, and includes new systems to promote high-velocity action.
Infinite Galaxies can be played using popular science fiction settings from literature, cinema, and television, and includes advice for those who want to create their own settings.
Infinite Galaxies is available on PDF and print at DriveThruRPG and Indie Press Revolution. Check it out today before I catch up with you.
Do, 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 do. Sweet, that was fun.
You want to vamp for a second?
Yeah, I'm having actually a lot of fun.
More bespoke ad copy, yeah.
I'm actually having a lot of fun with fun doing those, because I've been trying to just pick different sci-fi genres.
Yeah.
I think I know what I'm going to do for the New Year's one. I'm not completely committed yet, but we'll see. Yeah. So I'll just add an extra thing on. I'll add an extra thing on really quick. We had a pretty good game of Forbidden Lands.
We did. Forbidden Lands is amazing.
Yeah, Forbidden Lands is rapidly becoming one of my favorite fantasy games. And it's funny because having done all of the dungeon crawling for the last couple sessions, this was the change in beat.
Yep.
So this was we're going to return to town for the first time in the month. and find out that things are getting a little out of hand in town.
Yes, quite a bit out of hand.
And that you guys, it's really funny because you guys have picked up some renown, right? Like, so people know who you are. Like,
Yep.
oh, you're the guys who like conquered
Got a
Weatherstone.
little reputation.
Right, but you're also like, yeah, we need gold, so we're going to transport this ale to the town in the south because
We want money.
money is what keeps
We
people
like money.
in in employ.
Yep. It's funny, every time we have a conversation about how much we're enjoying Forbidden Lands and DCC,
Yeah.
I think back to like 3 years ago, 4 years ago, where you were like, I don't like fantasy
I know,
that much.
the irony-
Like, fantasy was not your genre.
I am 100% with you, right? Like, the irony that 2 of my 3 campaigns are
Yep.
fantasy is actually
Not lost.
Like, it's not lost on me either, man. I don't know. Like, it just is. I mean, DCC, I just like because DCC
DCC is wacky fun. It's just like,
and we finished our funnel.
yep.
Which was a lot of fun. I forgot to mention that. Yeah, we finished our
Yeah.
funnel, and we now have our first level character. So the survivors survive, and actually some of the survivors from the encounter didn't survive when they spun the wheel of fate.
The Wheel of Fate was hysterical because one of my characters took a spin on the Wheel of Fate, and that character basically, the result was you never went on the adventure, and
Just keep talking.
oh, sorry. You never went on the adventure, and so grab one of the other characters that died during the adventure, and they come back, and you play that character. And that character gets to spin the wheel as well. So I did that. One of them pulled the character out, and I'm like, oh, I'll take this one back.
Perseus.
No, that was the other guy.
Oh,
Sir Percy was the last one I brought back.
yes.
But the second one, they spun, and they got the same result. It was like, oh, nope, you're gone. You never came in. And that's when I brought back Sir Percy, the squire, who is now going to be a knight. And, it was a lot of fun. That funnel was cool.
And Jerry, And Jerry brought back Mock.
Just Mock.
The cheesemonger. Which is sad because his elf, who would have clearly become a villain one day in the game, did not survive the Wheel of Fate.
That's too bad.
Jerry will say she wasn't evil, but she was not good. She was very pragmatic, as in,
Look,
well, if we have to kill all these people,
as soon as you start sentences like if we have to, or
right? Yes.
when you start compromising any ideal that might be not on the side of what people would normally think of as good or decent, then you might be evil.
Correct. I think what is still absolutely amazing about DCC is that the DCC 0 and first level adventures are all like cosmic level adventures. Like they do an amazing job of writing them so that it's still possible to live through them. And at the same time, it's At the same time, there's no pulling punches. Like, this adventure was like, you need to free this demigod from a prison guarded by a titan. Like, the titan is like under this sleep spell, and yet you're still like a bunch of 0 level peasants like conducting this raid to try to free this demigod, only to realize you're not the first group of peasants that's ever tried to conduct this raid. But it's like their ability to, like, you're not just kicking in the doors and fighting goblins in your first and 0 level adventures. Like, you are like spanning the cosmos. Like, it's very different from how like Pathfinder and stuff did their, like, you know, their ramp ups. Like, DCC was like, fuck it, just put the thing on 11 and let's play.
That's pretty funny.
All right.
I can get behind that.
Oh, you would love it. You would love it. And the actual adventures are decent.
I'm sure I would. They sound like they're my kind of adventure, but they're totally weird.
Oh, they're the least weird of them are weird. Like, and then they get weirder. So we actually just picked what our first level adventure is going to be. I put up 3 candidates in our Slack room, and the group voted. So I'm going to go buy the adventure and start prepping.
Is this your Thursday night game?
Yeah, yeah. It's Thursday, every other Thursday night.
Did I talk about how I got murdered playing D&D?
No.
So I got killed playing Adventures League the other day.
Did you?
Yep, opened up a door. There was a lightning ward on it. I took 18 points of damage. And I was a first level character with 9 hit points max. And if you go beyond your max hit points in damage, like negatively, you're just dead. So I got exploded.
You got dead.
I got exploded.
That's my favorite D&D joke of all time. There's writing on the door. What does it say? I memorized explosive runes.
Boom! It's gone. I got dead. I was so dead. All right. Well, I suppose we should go to the garage then, huh? All right, let me do that.
Access granted.
Hey, you remembered the code again.
I did. I generally remember the code these days. I'm pretty good about it. I'm generally more organized, although there's a lot of moving parts of the show these days.
It's technically way more complex than it used to be.
Today I was teaching Bob how to set everything up again because there's like a whole new setup because we have new cameras.
There's a whole bunch of new stuff.
New cameras and we're using my desktop instead of the laptop for the show to stream it and things like that. But anyways, that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about life paths, right? So
What the hell is that?
It's not common. It's not utilized in too many games, but that doesn't mean it's not cool because it is pretty cool. That was a pretty wacky story that we told earlier. And strangely enough, you can have that kind of wacky story with a life path.
Yes, you can.
So we're going to take it apart here in the garage, right? You can also hack this idea into any game that you might want to play. So why don't we just start with talking about what they are, and we'll spend the second half of the segment, getting around inside of it.
Sure.
So tell me about life paths.
Yeah, Lifepath mechanic is a character generation subsystem.
Can I say something first? I've never played a game or played anything that has a life path in it.
I have played...
Never used a life path once.
I've played 2 of the 3 examples we're going to give.
So this is interesting to me because I know what they are, but I've never played a game with a life path mechanic.
You're going to drop into a definition without the definition panda?
I suppose I could.
We don't have to drop that thing every
Just saying.
time.
Now I'm hitting it. It's hard to hear it. So
You are in the presence of Definition Panda.
I mean, it's fair, because Todd's on the...
Plus, Todd's on the show.
Todd's
so
on the show tonight. So.
right.
Okay.
We pay homage to the crapper. Pay homage to the crapper. Like Rick.
I mean, that's
like
literally
Rick
Bob's
does.
shtick, man.
Ba-dum-bum.
Oh
We're
man.
here all week.
Tip your waiter. Alrighty, let's try again. A life path mechanic is a character generation subsystem that is designed to simulate some part of the character's past before the player begins agency of the character. Right? So it's supposed to simulate like what happened to the character before you start playing it.
Sure.
And the goal of the life path is to generate a set of past events that kind of fill in parts of the character's life.
Now, some life paths, they don't just include events, but they can include other elements of character generation. Like they can give you skill points or equipment.
Yeah.
I assume some of them could possibly or probably give you feats.
Yeah, we'll talk. We're going to actually talk about. We're going to talk about 2 that actually build characters and 1 that just builds background.
Okay, cool.
So we'll definitely do that. The system requires a number of roles. Some of these, what you call it? So some of these may have a fixed number. Like you're going to roll on this table, then you're going to roll on this table, then you're going to roll on this table, and then you're done.
Okay.
And some of them are going to let you choose how many times that you go into the life path like loop.
I see.
Okay.
Because that's like a push your luck game.
It is
Yeah,
kind of
kind
a,
of.
well, we'll talk about one that is absolutely a push your luck game.
You mean Traveler?
Yes, yes, indeed. And so there's often a cost for going into the loop, and it's often aging or danger or some sort of misfortune, right? So
Okay.
it does actually become like a little bit of a push your luck mechanic.
So it seems like the end result of a life path, or the idea behind it, is to create the framework of a backstory for the character.
Yeah, so it's gonna include like a chronology of events. It's going to give you like a number of hooks that you could potentially use for future events, and it may also give you some explanation for how your character gained certain abilities.
So it sounds like to me that it also does a few other things. It can give you a connection to the character by giving you a bunch of elements that help you engage with pieces that are interesting to you. That seems to make sense, right?
Yeah.
Also, maybe you can create a sense of excitement. So, like, if you get items or boons or whatever, like that is neat stuff for your character, right?
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, those all seem like really cool things about life paths.
Yeah. Yeah. It's what you call it. It's exactly what it's exactly what you're saying. And Yeah, it's basically like a kind of way to. We'll talk about in a little bit about boosting your emotional investments.
Sure, absolutely. So why don't you break it down for me, Rap and Rock and Phil Panda Bear?
Right. So
I have no idea where I was going with that.
I really don't know where you were going with that.
I mean, that's your
Trying to wait for it to go.
Commit to the bit.
rapping.
Commit to the bit.
It's like your rapping stage name.
Correct.
Squeak a squeak a squawk a squeak a squeak a squawk. I
All
don't
right,
really have it.
Are you? Did you
Oh,
drink
wiki,
that coffee
wiki,
too
woo.
fast? Are you okay?
I'm fine.
Okay.
I'm not even talking that quickly.
I know, but you're just you. Okay, I got this. All right.
What was in that chocolate you gave us?
I didn't even eat mine yet. I only took
Oh,
one
no.
It
out.
came from Denver.
Well, now we know.
Maybe they're edibles. I mean, we're not that show.
I hope not.
Right. Okay, so if we break the system down, what does it look like when you're actually doing this? Right, so Lifepath is typically like a flow chart of sorts.
Okay.
There's often some sort of algorithm that that you go through, right? So whether the algorithm is looped or whether it's like a straight linear piece, it's one of there's a structure to it, right? You'll know that you're starting it. You'll know when you're ending.
So there's a flow that provides a rhythm.
No, it's not really a rhythm. It's a thing you do. It's like a program.
I'm sorry, never mind.
Seriously, trying to get through this section.
It's not funny if you have to explain the joke.
Right. All right.
So the player, like, they're going to start this flow chart, right?
Yeah.
And they're going to follow prompts and then rolls when required. Recording the results as they go. That's like the idea.
Yeah. Now, sometimes depending on which one it is, sometimes a random roll is involved. So like you go to the first part of this thing, and then you may have to make a roll, or maybe you just make a choice, something like that. We'll talk about that, and like how it works in a couple different games. Okay.
So then when they exit the life path, they have this collection of events.
Yep.
And those events round out the character.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. So, right. So the life path is, it's part of character generation. It often will make character generation a lot longer. Right. So, it's not ideal for like, rolling characters in a convention.
Okay.
Right. Because, what happens is, every character has to go through this process. And so sometimes if you're doing this as a group, right, maybe everybody, if you have enough copies of the book or whatever, everybody's doing their own life path, like they're sitting there rolling their things.
Sure.
But then inevitably everybody's going to share what happened.
Well, that would make sense then.
Right? Like, oh, in my third iteration, like I got this thing or I, was injured or whatever. And people are going to go around the table, right? So that's adding on to our time.
I wonder if there's any life paths that allow characters to then, like, cross their stories over.
Well, so that gets into things like, and so technically, right? So if we're not getting super picky about the definition, technically the Fate Trio
Sure.
falls into that into
Yeah.
that thing,
The
right?
core, the core idea of the Fate Trio.
Yeah, the Fate Trio, where you're telling a story and then you everybody pivots and you're telling something, you're crossing over to each other's stories. So yes, that can kind of achieve the same thing. It's a little different from a life
If
path.
that's a life path, then I have played a game with a life path.
Yes, I'm not a.
It's not really a life path.
It's not quite a life path because the life path is supposed to simulate. Well, it is and it isn't, right? So it simulates a whole bunch. It simulates past.
I suppose according to our definition it is.
It does, right? Because it simulates past events that kind of
Yeah.
explains things about your characters. And if you're doing it in Fate, you're gaining aspects from it. So they are actually filling in why you gain these aspects.
Sure.
So yeah. So in some way, Fate does achieve a bit of the life path, mechanic. All right, cool. So the other thing is, like, if you're doing this for character creation, you might, as a GM, going back to the fact that this takes a little while, you might lead everybody through it, right? So you might just have everybody at the table and be like, cool, we're going to go in the life path. Cool, Bob, we'll start with you. What's your first roll?
Oh, I turned into
Right.
a skunk.
Excellent. Chris, make your roll, right? And then, and then...
I set Bob on fire accidentally.
Right. And then we just keep going around the table. And so, again, the life path is a longer... it's a longer character creation event. So you just have to take that into account when you're thinking about things like con games, one-shots, and things like that, that it may not be the best, mechanic.
By the way, that those two rolls right there, like, gives Bob animal handling, and that gives me pyromania.
Sure.
Yeah.
Come Come on, these are the jokes.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm just, you know.
Made sense.
I'm sorry. I was like in business mode. Sorry, I'll relax a little. Like I just.
So we want to talk about
I
games.
was like, let's get through this text.
You want to talk about games that use them?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
You mentioned the granddaddy
The
of them all.
granddaddy of all
Right?
LifePath systems. Assuming that it is the granddaddy of all LifePath systems. I guess it is.
I'm fairly confident that this is the granddaddy.
And we're talking about Traveler.
Yeah.
Traveler. It's the most quoted.
Yeah.
It's age based.
It is age.
I actually knew that. Like you start at 18 years old, and then you have to go through this loop like we talked about.
Yep.
And every loop you go through costs 4 years.
Yeah.
And then along the way you get skills. There's events that occur, advancement happens, and there's a chance for things to go wrong. In fact, you could go so wrong that you can die.
In the original game, yes. I think by the time Mongoose did the version, you didn't die, but like you could get pretty jacked up.
You could.
But you, in the original Little Black Book version, you totally could be in the middle of character creation and just fucking die. Like, I'm going to make this character, and he's a scout, and look, I got all this stuff, and now I'm fucking dead.
I was on the spaceship, and it was great, and then I got blown out of the sky.
Yeah.
Or out of the space.
Traveler was really the push your luck mini game, right?
Uh-huh.
Like, it was very, and the reason you pushed your luck, you didn't just subject yourself to this on a whim. In Traveler, you went into a particular specialty like Scout or Navy or whatever, and as you progressed through, you had a chance when you mustered out to get certain bonuses. And so, like, the one I remember is that if you were a Scout and you rolled well enough, you could get a Scout ship. It was like the only way to start the game with your own ship was that the Scout could get a Scout ship. So you might start pushing your luck in the system to try to get the ship. And so the balancing piece to that is you could die. Now, the other thing it did was it tended to make characters that were a bit older. Traveler characters were not 18 and 20-year-olds gallivanting through space. Traveler characters were characters that were like in their 40s or older.
They'd seen a thing or two.
That had mustered
Seasoned
out.
vets, yeah.
They were seasoned vets that had mustered out of careers and were playing. So it actually gave a slightly different tone to the game because these were characters that had actually had a career of stuff, and were now like in a second career of now starting to like adventure or travel a galaxy or something. So yeah, it is the granddaddy. The thing I will say about it is that when Mongoose took over Traveler, like when they started making Traveler, they also cloned this for the Judge Dredd version, the Mongoose version of Judge Dredd, and they had a Lifepath system for making your judge that went through from the time you were like in the academy to your first times on the street to like all of those things. But very similar because it was essentially the Traveler system made for Judge Dredd.
I am in law.
Okay, the next one is near and dear to my heart, which is near and dear to my heart, which is Cyberpunk 2020.
Rocket Boys!
Rocker Boys for life, man. So Cyberpunk 2020 had a Lifepath system that did not build your character. It was designed to give you details about your life, but you actually did all of your character creation, like picking your skill points. Maybe to make this clear, in the Traveler one, when you picked a career, you actually got skills. So every time you went through the loop, you got skills or your existing skills got bumped up. In Cyberpunk 2020, you make your character, and then you do this life path, which then tells you about your past.
Okay.
And it was pretty detailed, right? Like it's a series of tables, and it is it's a linear life path. Like you start it and then you go down a path, and then you get to a point where you pick, like you roll to see events, and you kind of go off to subtables.
Okay.
And then you're done. So you had to like look ethnicity, family, motivation, and then the life event one was these kind of random life events.
So were the motivations like destroy the government,
Yeah. Like you had the option to pick any of those yourself.
rebel against the man?
Yeah, look cool. I'm sure.
That was the motivation?
I'm more than certain look cool is in there as
Be
motivation.
as emo as possible.
No, they didn't have emo. That word wasn't around.
No.
Cyberpunk's based on 80s, not 90s. No emo.
What is the equivalent to emo from the 80s?
There is no emo in the 80s. You snorted cocaine, you cloaked yourself in chrome, and you were awesome.
Oh, be as beat poet as possible.
Yeah, it's like Barney. Be as awesome as possible.
Be as awesome as possible.
Yeah. But those life events were the kinds of things that would tell you, like, you gained an enemy, like you fell in love, those kinds of things. And they were great because that's what they did. They seeded you with all of these things that the GM could then pull on.
Okay.
Right? Because like you crossed a booster gang and have an enemy. Like you just give the GM, hand that over to the GM. That's going to come back later in a story. You had a former lover. What happened to them? All, just material. So it was good. Like it generated a lot of background for your character. And the way you did it was you would figure out you would either pick your age or you were 2d6 plus 16 years old.
Sure.
And each year you got a life event.
It is just an elaborate backstory generator.
Oh yeah. Fancy backstory generator. But it was pretty cool.
So
while we're on that,
Yeah.
is there a difference between backstory and Lifepath?
well, I mean, we're in the garage. We're talking about the mechanics of generating this stuff.
So
Of course, you could just come up with a backstory if you wanted to, but the idea of life path mechanics, I think it's probably better. Do you think Cyberpunk 2020 counts as actually a life path mechanic? Like, there's a bunch of charts and rolls, right?
So let's go back to our definition, right?
Yeah.
So in our definition, because there's no absolutes in this game.
Sure.
In our definition, what we said was that it helped you fill in your past, right? And then we said optionally, it could give you things like skills and feats and bonuses and things like that. So it is called in the Cyberpunk game a life path generator. It is the kind of life path generator that does not generate a character. It generates the character's background. The Traveler one does more of generating the character, and it has a little bit of the life events and stuff, because when you muster out of a career, you roll on the table to kind of find out what things happen, because there were fortunes and there were mishaps. So you got a little, it's like a sliding scale, like how much mechanical background are you generating versus how much story background are you generating, right? So the Cyberpunk one is very skewed to story. The Traveler one is skewed a little more towards mechanics. And the Burning Wheel one is actually skewed more towards mechanics.
So I guess
which is our next one we're going to talk about.
Yeah, the best way to say it, I guess, would be that there's some sort of procedurally set up, there's a procedurally set up generated system for creating this backstory.
Pretty much how we defined it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we said it was an algorithm that by which you that you went through. The hallmark parts of it is that you rolled for things, right? So these are, you went through this table and you make rolls.
Yeah.
You make choices and rolls.
I could see a backstory. I could see a life path system that is a series of questions that it asks you.
Yeah, we're going to talk about
instead of being a series of generated rolls to generate random elements.
Yeah, actually, that's one of the things I want to talk about is that it's not it's not used a lot, and it probably has room for a not 80s 90s design.
It probably does.
What would a modern version of a life path system look like today? Because the ones that we're talking about, right? So Traveler is a 70s 80s, and then it's been iterated decade to decade.
But it was born in the 70s.
Right. Cyberpunk 2020 was a late 80s, early 90s game. It has, similar technology. What would a 2020 life path system look like? That's a question I want to ask at the end of the show, because I think that there's something cool about this mechanic, but I don't think it needs to be 500 charts and tables to accomplish it.
Sure.
And I do actually need to look up something. When we get to the break, I'm going to look it up, because Jerry was very nice to send me a third-party life path generator from like the 80s. That if you thought any of the other ones that we're talking about are complicated, this third-party add-on thing, no kidding, has like hundreds of tables.
So I guess we should talk about Burning Wheel then, as our third example of a life path game.
Yeah.
All right. I've never actually played Burning Wheel. I played Mouse Guard, but it's not the same.
Yes.
Not the same at all. So character generation was done through their life path system, And a character was built by taking a number of different life paths, and you start at birth and you go forward. And each life path, I guess, is a number of years, probably different set of number of years, depending on
They are slightly different.
age ranges, like the experiences that you have at age ranges.
No, it would be something like I'm going to take farmer,
Oh,
and
that costs me.
farmer is 6 years or something.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And by doing that, you get a trait, some resources, some stat points, and some skills. So it's a branching array.
So here's how it works. If you want to wind up,
It's a flow chart. Like, and when you go down the flow chart, like some things that you've gone past, you can't go back to.
and it's not visually presented like that. It's just presented in tables for like here are all the peasant life paths, here are all the villager life paths, the noble life paths. But the thing is, if you want to get to man-at-arms,
You had to go look at Man-at-Arms and
start
trace it
working
back.
yourself backwards,
Yeah.
right? You
Well,
had to
that's
be like,
interesting.
right? You had to be like, okay, if I'm a peasant, how do I get to Man-at-Arms? And the thing is that certain life paths only open up access to other ones.
Man, Luke Crane, you so out there.
Right. Now, again, this isn't like this is a this is a late '90s, early 2000s game,
Wild, wacky
right?
stuff.
No rolling, right? There's no rolling for this, but you actually had to like plot your way through this, and it was even, I would say, if this was hard, Burning Empires, which is Burning Wheel but harder.
In space.
Yeah, Burning
In
Wheel
space.
in space.
Or you could just play Infinite Galaxies. Just saying.
You'd learn it faster.
There, sponsor plug.
Yeah. So the thing about the Burning Wheel one was, if we're talking about that continuum of what creates characters versus what creates backstory, the Burning Wheel one doesn't have any. It doesn't have events or like, oh, you found fortune as a miller, right? It just is like, I took miller 5 years, then I went from miller to conscripted guard, right? 5 years to
So I have a question.
sergeant.
I have a question for you. In this life path system, do you only have a certain number of years to spend before you start the game?
No, so it's a point of diminishing returns. So the longer you go out, your stats, your physical
Decrease?
stats start to decrease.
So it's like I can get more traits, but I have less raw potential because I've used my raw potential to get these to
Yeah.
learn all these abilities.
I've crafted a killer backstory, but now I'm old.
Well, and that was the thing, right? So you needed to get
I've crafted a killer backstory, but now I'm Bob.
right. So you needed to actually craft your way through it to come out at there were, like, for certain things, there were paths you needed to get through.
Okay.
Yeah, it was interesting. It's I don't want to say it's complicated, because when you read it, you're like, okay, this makes sense. But the act of doing it, if you're doing it purposefully, like
It's an involved process.
yeah. Like if you're just like, cool, I'm gonna take the first one and see where I wind up, like,
Yeah.
then it's not so bad. But if you're like, I really want to start this game as a man of, as a man of arms, you got a lot of work to do to get to your, to backtrack to the starting point. But if you're like, hey, I'm gonna start out as peasant, and at the end you're like, I'm a battlefield physician.
Yeah.
Like it, you wind up with a cool story because you're
I'm
like,
really
oh, I
not
was
as concerned with what I come out as. I just like to come out as a man with arms.
Yes. Yeah.
That was good.
Yeah. It's interesting, right? So it's very interesting it's a very interesting way to make a character.
Okay.
And it doesn't,
I'm with you. It sounds fun.
If you crack open Burning Wheel, right, it makes complete sense for the rest of that game that, like, there's a whole separate subsystem for making a character.
because there's a whole separate subsystem for most things.
Yeah, because there's a core system and there's like 15 subsystems in that game. Every one of them's like a fucking mini game.
All right. Is that it? Are we good with our introduction?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention really quick. Central Casting is the name of the book. That was the one that Jerry sent over.
Oh, okay.
By Janelle Jaquays.
Thank you.
Janelle
Yes.
Jaquays.
And
it's so
Do you
I
mind-
don't.
Do you want to put it in the show notes somewhere, Bob, so that I can make sure I have it in the show
absolutely.
notes?
I don't know if you remember. I'm gonna say this to Bob. You might remember as well, but there was a period of time in the '80s where, like Mayfair and a few other companies just made things that were like for D&D, but without saying they were for D&D. right? Like they published things that like TSR was like getting annoyed with, but they couldn't do anything about it.
When was this?
Like mid 80s.
Yeah, I wasn't playing D&D yet.
Right. So they
I
were
wasn't playing role-playing games
right.
yet.
So this book comes out. I think it's in that era, like it's 80s, 80s, possibly 90s, and it is like it's just tables, man. It's, like I looked at it, and I was
All
like,
of the tables.
Well, I looked at it and I was like, no, that makes complete sense for like when this book came out. Like this thing's a monster.
It's
like,
literally something you could actually kill somebody with tables, but you could hit them with it.
well, I don't know how you would ever finish making a character. Like just it's a lot.
So man, that was like lonely fun back then, right? Like,
Whoa.
make a bunch of characters.
So that's an excellent point, which we didn't talk about. It is the kind of subsystem that you could, as a player, go and play by yourself.
Yep.
Like you could go and just do what you said. I'm going to make some characters, and then I'm going to just go through the central casting thing and make their backgrounds for a weekend.
Because they didn't have the in-depth video games that we have these days.
You have to have seen the video games. I say it not
Pong's
to.
fun.
Bob loves Pong.
I also like playing Sword Quest,
I'm I'm still addicted to that.
block breaking game.
Yeah, that breakout game. Fucking love that game. Anyway, cool. All right, cool. Want to talk about play experiences?
Oh yeah, sure. Why not? Let's do that.
Sure. So the play experience that that these Lifepath systems are designed to create is they create backstory in one version or another, right? Whether it's super detailed or whether it's more procedural. Which in turn raises your emotional investment on your character.
Okay.
Right? Because the more you know about your character, the more decisions you've made about your character in putting your character together, the more you're becoming invested. Right? It can make character creation more exciting.
Yes.
I mean, the push your luck one in Traveler, like, who knows what you're getting, right? Maybe you're getting something cool. Maybe you're getting dead. So
You're dead.
It definitely did that. What else did it do?
So I mean, it increases the uniqueness of characters by adding these additional random information bits.
Yeah, I mean, like you don't wind up with just like I have a scout, you have a scout, right? It's like even if you have scouts, you don't even have the same skills, right? Based on how you rolled.
The thing that I think is coolest about it is that like these are stories then that can be used as material for campaigns, like seeds for story hooks and
Story hooks. Yep.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, the cyberpunk one, you might as well after you finish rolling it, just give it to the GM. Like here, GM, like everything you need about every like subplot and any plot you want to write.
Yeah, and if you were going to help the game master out a little bit more, you highlight the things that are like these are the things. Out of all of these things, these are the things.
Yeah, yeah. Ultimately, what you're coming up with is richer characters. Now, I think the irony is.
I don't know about. Is richer the right word? It might be
you come
richer.
out with knowing a lot about your character.
You come out with a bunch of information about your character.
Yeah, I think that the challenge is that, and especially for '80s games, is like, how much investment do you put in the life path versus how quickly will my character get murdered in play? Right, like in Traveler, I think you were. I don't remember how resilient you were. Like you lost your attribute points, so like I think you had a decent number of hit points. In Cyberpunk, you could die fairly easily in Cyberpunk. So spending a half hour rolling up, a detailed backstory for a character that's, going to take like a AK to the face and not be able to be, recovered. Like, I don't know. That's part of one of the things that we probably will talk about. We could talk about after the break.
Those games were concerned more with game than with storytelling.
Right. But it's still, it's
There's
still
nothing wrong with that. It's just
right. But it's a thing about like, how much time do you spend making a character versus initial lethality of the game, and as Kate kind of mentioned in the chat room, which I think we'll get to in a second. Character creation may not be the most awesome place to do the life path.
No, I agree. I was actually thinking about, I'm like, why can't I have like, here's my story arc, then I will have like my 2 to 4 session story arc, then I'll have a moment of life path after.
Yeah, exactly. Like once I know this character's viable.
This is my level up stuff, right?
Like DCC wastes no time on character backgrounds, right? Like character background in DCC is occupation.
Yep.
And they
Gone
even,
farmer.
I mean, to take that one step further, DCC has character scratch offs. Like you scratch off your character because you're like, oh, this is fun.
They also
this is like a scratch off,
make a killed stamp.
which is really hilarious.
Right. But the thing with DCC is, what they tell you is, in the funnel, you should have 4 or more characters. Whoever survives are your level 1 characters. And you keep all of them until level 3. And then at level 3, you need to select 1 character
To proceed forward.
Because what they're basically telling you is like, look, the game's pretty lethal. Don't invest too heavily in these characters. But by level 3, you probably could focus it.
Yeah, the game understands what it is.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So, so that's Lifepaths, right?
That's
First half- I mean-
that's the first half of our discussion. I think we should go to the chat room now. But before we go to the chat room, we should Schwazi to see who's going to do the mid
Schwazi?
the
Okay.
mid break.
Schwazi.
Unless you want to rock paper scissors.
No.
for it.
Schwazi's great. I love it.
I mean, who doesn't like to Schwazi?
no, it's
for
good.
a
I just
thing?
had to like.
Are we
really-
still doing the Schwazi phrasing thing, or are we done with that?
No, we're done with that.
Okay, man, you're.
Put your finger
Fingers,
in.
please.
I got to touch your phone. Darn it! Now I'm touching your phone. I'm touching your phone, and Bob, you get
It's
to do
Bob.
it.
Oh my God. Hey, Pandas Talking Games.
Black
Have
and
you
white,
heard
black
of
and
that
white,
one?
red all over.
Yes. Fill and send to answer your questions about RPGs from the perspective of one-shots and campaigns with some panda
I
silliness.
feel like red doesn't happen a whole lot there.
Probably not. But the panda silliness happens a whole lot, which is why there are outtakes. And that is Pandas Talking Games.
I'm familiar. With
Yes.
Are you familiar?
It's amazing.
Aren't you on that show?
Yes.
That's what I thought.
I am part of that show.
Excuse me.
Is there anything in the chat room?
Yes. So Jason's in the house again tonight. Genesis of Legend, and he made a comment that stuck out to me. Life paths are remarkably handy. I used them in After the War as a glorious way of expressing setting through character creation.
Yeah,
And I
nice.
think that's a great way
Yep.
to make use of those with the questions that you're answering or the choices that you're making during that life path bit. You're helping to kind of flash that setting for the characters and for the players to enforce all of that, which I think is cool.
I think life paths are not a bad. I think modernizing life paths, and I know there's been some chat already in the chat room about like what some games are that actually do some of these things, but like as a nice framework for a session 0 type thing. Like Fate City Creation, if you're using city creation and character creation, can do some of that. But that's
The Fate Trio does
It's an older version of it.
The Fate Trio is fantastic for that.
Yeah.
I mean, I saw people mentioning For the Queen. Like we talked about swords for the Queen.
Oh,
using
that
For
is-
the Queen as your basis for your Swords Without Master game. Like
Yep.
this is how you build your characters.
That is,
That's very much
I still want to
Life
run that
Path-esque.
because I am sure that is
Yeah.
sitting on a pile of gold.
Yep.
Right? Like, I am absolutely certain that if you play For the Queen, and then you use, and during it, people start picking out their
Yeah.
named
named
items.
Pick out your name
items.
stuff. Yeah.
Right, and your feats heroic that the second the
Queen comes under attack.
queen comes under attack, you switch to
To a
playing.
perilous phase.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like just a
Yeah, I
perilous.
love that idea. We need to do that.
We need to do it.
Ange had a comment.
Yes.
One of the common problems with backgrounds in RPGs in general is that too many players put all the cool stuff in their past. This can happen with life paths too.
Yes.
And that's the thing. When you create your character background, if you write a detailed 6-page background for your character, I think you're putting in way too much detail.
All right, I'm gonna balance this.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna balance this between two things. Right. There's two things a background accomplishes. Okay. And they're different.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's two things background accomplishes. One, it makes the player either A, interested enough or comfortable enough to play the character, and B, it provides potential story hooks, NPCs, and things like that for the game master. Now,
Hopefully,
on that-
secondarily, it'll set you into the setting of the game.
sure, on that point, for the first part, you write your backstory as long as you need it to be. You want to write a 15-page backstory for yourself so that you've cemented this character in your head and you feel like you can get to the table and really dig into this character. You knock yourself out.
Kevin, if that's your fun.
Yeah, if that's what you enjoy, absolutely.
And then you give the GM a bulleted list of 6 important things out of that for backstory stuff. Like write an executive summary, give it to the GM, because the GM can't read a 15-page background story
Yeah.
for every character.
Nor do they want to.
Yeah.
But they definitely want a list of, I have a mysterious aunt my mother vanished, whatever, because that is what the GM will use. So when it comes to backgrounds, write whatever you want for yourself, but be kind to your GM and share the essentials.
And by the same token, if you do have that 15-page backstory for your own mental image of your character, how he came to be, they came to be, and where they are and all that, don't be against changing something in play if you give that bulleted list to your GM and then something comes up and it's like, oh, so you had the mysterious ant or whatever, and the GM goes left with the mysterious ant, but in the 15 pages that you wrote, you went right. Like, try to be open to those things to let it flow organically as well.
If it hasn't hit the table, it's
Just
still
to,
it's still fair game to change.
Let me take this back to Lifepath.
Yeah,
And why in a lot of ways Lifepath can be more, how Lifepath can be useful compared to backstory. Like just somebody bringing their backstory to the table.
Yep.
What a Lifepath can do is help focus the person that's making the character into the setting of the game and into the story of the game that's going to be played.
Yeah.
Because they're generally leading questions or a set of procedures that will create a character that fits into the play of the game. And that is a useful tool. I've seen, like Ange said, I've seen people bring stories to the table that are like, this is not the game we're playing. Like, you told me this epic story about how you did all these awesome things and you're only level 2.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, you've missed the point.
Right.
And maybe I missed the point in not telling you or throwing forth those constraints.
Well, and that's the cool thing about the life path, is that
It's a constraint.
Yeah. Well, the life path, if done properly, the life path was part of the game to begin with.
That's true.
And so the life path should be reinforcing setting. So if you are playing games where you are scrubs, then the life path should basically, have things like, you once saved the farmer's barn from burning down and you're a hero of the town, right? Not like you once killed the Lich King, like that you found under the town, but you're second level.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I do think that's I do think that's I think that's the danger of using disconnected third-party life paths. Like that central casting is cool, but that central casting isn't part of your campaign. Whereas like the Cyberpunk 2021 very much was part of that campaign and was about things like tragic romances and because that's like the parts of like that's part of what Pondsmith was trying to bring into the game.
Even from just a set of leading questions perspective, as far as like life path backstory questions go, like this sounds like that's what a lot of the Cyberpunk 2021s were.
Well, they were like leading questions, except they answered them all.
Yeah.
Right. They were like answers.
Answers for leading questions.
Yes.
If in a more modern idea, like if you're going to play D&D and Eberron, because I'm playing a lot of Eberron, like
Sure.
there's questions like, what were you doing during the last war? Right? Like, but that's really broad and vague. You can answer that in any way, shape, or form.
Absolutely.
The other thing is like, you fought for Breland in this unit in the last war. What happened to, like, then you start asking questions about a battle inside of that.
Yeah.
Now we've established like the battle's important. The commanding officer could be important.
Sure.
Your unit members, like, why are you still hanging out with your unit members? Like,
Yeah.
Like that is a very different focused set of leading questions that can be considered a life path in a lot of ways.
Right. So if you wanted to do an 80s life path for Eberron, right? And like, let's say that the focus of your game was, I want to tell a story about how people get on after the war, right? Like I want the things that happened to people in the past to be either haunting or entwined with what's happening with them. So you could create a whole random table life path that's like, okay, what country did you serve in the war, right? Of Breland, like where were you deployed, right? Roll, and then like here's a mission generator, right? Where you roll a couple tables and it kind of tells you some things about the the thing, and like, oh, on the mishap table I lost a close friend. Like, who was that friend?
Yeah.
Right? And you could do that, and then characters would come out with this, like, military history. And they would all have not the same history, but similarly structured.
Common framework.
Common frameworks,
Yeah.
yeah. That you could then, as a GM, pull from to use in the game.
Yeah.
That's actually interesting because then if everybody's like together as an adventuring party later in life, then like they all have this common war experience history that they can play off of each other with. Like my experience in the war is very different than yours, or man, for a period of time we fought on different sides and we didn't know.
So Underground did not have quite a life path system for that, but they had in Underground, your character was part of a unit, and your unit.
Man, there are some people in the chat room that are just pulling up really good examples of stuff. Like I forgot Smallville had that in that like they used the Cortex Plus version of it. That's a lot like a life path, like what we're talking about. And like,
Well, because they built the relationship webs.
Yeah.
Stuff. Yeah. So Underground had a thing where you had to belong to a unit.
I remember.
And they had a rule that there was a rule about you had to honor a request from one of your fellow unit members. It wasn't enforced mechanically. It was enforced setting wise. It was a big deal if you dissed somebody on a request from a unit member with the first time. If I found Chris somewhere and it was oh man, I haven't seen you since Paraguay 2025, and you were I need help, man, right? It was a big deal in the game if you were no.
Yeah, that would be a big deal.
Yeah. But it had a little thing where you were bonded to a unit. The GM would come up with some places, some wars that you were in, and there was a chance to increase in rank, and there was a chance to get some bonus gear and stuff when you mustered out. It was a very tiny life path system.
I think the thing that I'm getting at here is there's a lot more of this mechanic in games than we thought there was. This mechanic has proliferated into a variety of different ways. It's not using the same way, the same setup that it used to use, but it's there all over the place.
I agree. Right. I think that's actually a thing we didn't write about in the show notes, but I think you're absolutely right. Is that
let's be fair, you didn't write about it in the show notes.
Correct. I didn't write about them in the show notes. I think that it's really interesting that
that's just me saying that Phil writes a lot of the show notes, not that Phil missed something.
Yeah, correct. It also means I don't do anything technical on the show. Chris does all the technical stuff.
Well, yeah.
Yep. It's called division of labor.
Yeah, it's division of labor.
Yep. But yeah, I think what I think you're right. I think that things from those old life path systems got broken out, reclaimed, spun out into other things, like leading questions, some of those questions on the beginnings of hooks, the hook questions in Dungeon World.
Yep.
Are
PBTA leading questions, yeah.
Yeah, they are. It's always strange sometimes when I look at the chat room, there's 12 people in the chat room and 10 of them have published games. It's well,
it says something nice about the people who come listen to
it. One more before we jump back into the topic. Avi asked, is it important for life paths to be balanced?
Balanced or power appropriate?
And exactly, that's good. His clarification of that was balanced mechanically. But again, power appropriate is another question.
I think it's a good idea to have them at least be closely power appropriate.
Yeah, because if you go through and one path can give a person 2 extra skills and a talent, and another person goes through and they don't get any.
Right. So
you've got an imbalance in character abilities.
So I'll refer to the Traveler one from Mongoose, not the little black book one, because I looked at the Mongoose one this weekend while I was writing this. So the Mongoose one is very balanced. Each one of the different careers you can take has essentially the same layout. The difference being that different skills and different items become available based on it. Now, I will say what's not balanced were some of the fortunes. Getting your own ship as a scout is a way bigger deal. Now, they all had a mechanism to get space travel. Most of them were you had credits or something on a starship.
Sure.
That was going, you could, essentially you had vouchers, right? You could get on a ship and get to another planet kind of thing. But the scout definitely had the best thing.
Yeah, you kind of have bonus. I got a ship.
And the thing was, you didn't need the whole party to go play scouts and get ships, because that game you really just needed a ship
to get around.
Right. So it behooved you not to all do that.
What did you do if you didn't have a ship in Traveler?
No. So in Traveler, you paid credits to get on other ships.
Okay.
So you were basically you would have booked passage.
Never played Traveler.
Traveler was interesting. It's a medium sci-fi. I don't want to say it's super
Yeah,
hard.
I don't understand it because it's not any of the sci-fi trope shows that I'm used to.
No. So it's not like, hey, we're people with a spaceship and we're free to roam the galaxy. There was some of that, and that was a thing you could build towards if you didn't start initially with a ship. But a lot of times it was like, I'm booking passage on this ship because we need to get to this planet. It was like not so much about flying around space as much as it was like
Just
go
transport.
to planets.
Yeah.
But you could definitely get there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
You want to talk about some questions and stuff?
Let's do the
yeah.
thing.
I mean, we've done a bunch of that already, but we can continue on with this.
Yeah. Cool.
All right, hit me up with the first one then.
Sure. What are some tips for using life paths in your game?
I kind of already talked about it. I like
It
using.
is, but-
I like using them to tie the group together.
Sure.
Like I prefer my life path questions, if it were my life path
a
mechanics.
group path kind of thing.
Yeah, a group path. Like that way. That way.
Tie
there's
the
like
group together, interpersonal relationships.
Sure.
those are good ones for me. Like those are the ones that I liked the most.
Yeah.
Or any kind of questions that tie into whatever the if the game is one of those games where like somebody is actually bringing like a story framework to the table.
Sure.
Instead of like making it all up on the fly, which is perfectly fine. We've done that too.
Yeah.
But if you're bringing that, I like questions that actually tie people into that story framework too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think. I think I can just echo those same things. I think that while there is definitely value in character backstory, I think probably one of the best more modern, although I say that now as we're approaching 20 years out, but one of the more important questions that has been asked in character creation is, why is your group together?
Yeah.
Right? Because when I was a middle schooler in the 80s, and you looked at these party compositions of our D&D players, like our D&D group, it was like, why the hell would these people ever, like, why wouldn't this turn into the final act of Hamlet in the first 5 minutes of this game? And two, how can they possibly get anything done? Right? Like, there's an assassin and a paladin. Right? And like, we were like, yeah, cool, whatever. And then like, we'd get into a fight with each other and murder somebody, right?
Yeah, cool,
Yeah.
whatever. Die.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that question of like, yes, you have interesting backgrounds, but why are you a group?
Yeah.
Like, I think that is the best question. Like, because it solves so many problems.
For a certain set of games, right?
Yeah.
Well, if you're playing a game that's group set, like it doesn't, like you don't need that question in Urban Shadows.
Right.
Right. But you do need that question if you're playing.
You don't need that question in Monster Hearts. You don't need that question in any Hillfolk game.
Sure, but you do need it in
Thomas Stadium.
it helps greatly for games that are based around party dynamics.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's the there.
Yeah, if you're
Party, games around party dynamics for the party is supposed to be working together.
yeah, because in Urban Shadows, it's like you all live in the city.
Yeah, that's
Whether
a
you
political,
like each other or not, we'll find out.
It's a game about politics
yeah, and you know
urban fantasy politics.
yeah, and to be honest, that's not a game where you want to build a whole ton of group cohesion because it's a little more fun if it gets not straight on PvP, but if cross purposes,
Sure.
things like that.
Especially in something like Urban Shadows, when you've got debt that helps drive the game.
Yeah, it does.
You want some friction there.
Yeah,
So.
absolutely.
Yeah, as a player, I like to leave gaps for future stuff to like, oh, that's really cool. I'm going to use that and slot that into my backstory. And I like to lean into the randomness. If there's a random thing, if I roll something that's odd or like, I like to lean into that now and use that to flex my improv muscles. Okay, how can I leverage that? What does that mean? How can I make that interesting?
The springboard for creativity.
There you go, springboard for creativity. I like it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the other thing that's fun is I love creating in confines, like in constraints.
Sure.
So if I roll a whole bunch of random stuff and it's like, hey, make a background out of this, like take this weird collection of events in your character's life and draw a narrative through line through it.
It's funny because
that's fun.
Funny, it's a little funny to me because we're sitting here talking about this stuff, and it seems like the least important thing to all of us is the mechanical impact of this stuff.
I mean, I think that's got a lot to do with, well, yes and no, right? If the game depends on it, then no. Then I mean, I think then like if you're playing Traveler, I'm going to spend quite a bit of time thinking about which careers I want to go into, how long I want to spend in a career, or more importantly, I'm staying in this career until I get Vac Suit 1, right? And then
yeah.
you know,
That
and then
makes
I'm going to muster out and get pilot or something so I think the structure of the life path is going to focus your attention, right? Because if I can just go make a character, pick whatever attributes, stuff I want, and then the life path is primarily story based, then yeah, I'm super interested in like the story it creates. But if the life path is the way I'm going to make the character, nah, you sure as shit I'm going to be thinking about mechanically, like what's my tactic to get through this?
I mean, I'm okay with one or the other,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I really prefer if they can be closer to like balance in the middle, like both those ideas together.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
like when I'm going to make these interesting choices about what's going on with my character and the group around me for the story, but I'm also going to get some sort of mechanism around it, because that is like mechanics and story driving play together.
Yeah, I mean, I think anywhere where you can get the intersection of mechanics plus story.
The hardest thing ever to do sometimes.
It is. It's hard to land on both, right? Like Traveler definitely lands to the mechanical side.
So we were going to say, why don't more games use life path systems? But apparently they do.
Yeah, we're getting. Well, you know what I think is interesting is we're starting to see like some other. Yes, I mean there are other games that do, and I'm enjoying listening to how people are how they're getting implemented because they're different.
I'm gonna have to go back and like watch this on Twitch so I can see all the different conversations.
Yeah.
And I'm clearly some of them were like, oh, I never thought of it that way. And it's like, yeah, you can really look at that as a kind of a life path.
I think Kate had mentioned is microscope a life path, and the answer is only if you pluck one of the characters out of the timeline and make them.
Yeah.
Right? If you just play through microscope and then go off and make different characters, you've made a setting.
Yeah.
But it's not really a life path.
Well,
but if you went through,
isn't that the life path of a setting?
don't get like that.
That's meta.
Life path, we're talking about characters. Don't do that.
I mean,
Character settings have arcs, not lives.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm just busted. See, I make a joke now, and now you get all defensive. We're like the night of not getting each other's jokes tonight.
Jason says that more games don't use life path systems because it requires a lot of handling time and lonely time. And potentially, yes.
Yeah. I mean, it's not
all of them, but
right. But you know, over the past couple of years, there's been a huge amount of PBTA games, and one of the things about PBTA games is that you can put a blank sheet down at the table and like whip up your character and start playing. You can't do that with a classic life path system. You can with cool leading questions, right? Which is kind of like the streamness, like the streamlined modern version of it.
Yeah.
Seriously, I didn't upset you with that, did I?
No.
Okay. I just
You told me not to be funny like 40 minutes ago, so I've stopped.
Did it
being
just
funny.
catch up with you?
No, I just been.
Did it just catch up
I
with me?
haven't cracked a joke in like a half an hour, man. Although if Tim Hortons wants to send us T-shirts and hats, we will be happy to support you. Tim Hortons, so good.
You know, you could send T-shirts or hats, or you could send more coffee.
Well, I mean, we will wear the T-shirts and hats on the show, and then they can send us more coffee to go with the T-shirts and hats.
Yes, absolutely.
Tim Hortons, get some. It's good.
Send us a couple Tim cards, man. Tim Hortons will.
I would love to
trust
have
me, we'll spend
actual sponsorship, but that's
them. It would be
Tim's would be like, who are you?
It would be the most. What do you got? Like,
Who the fuck are these mooks? What the?
Wouldn't cost him much.
Yeah.
seriously, what are we going to do for product placement? Flip you a $25 gift card every couple months?
Yeah,
Sure,
pretty
here-
much.
What are we
here you
gonna
go,
get out of
kids.
it? You're gonna get like 2 more guests or 2 more
Right.
customers.
Yeah. A lot of our customers don't have Tim Hortons.
That's fair.
But they like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think Jason's right? Like the problem is that either you're sitting quietly rolling dice or making decisions without engaging anyone, or your character creation got a lot longer because you sat quietly, rolled, and made a bunch of decisions, and then have to tell everyone about it.
So let's talk about then, like, since this idea has come up, like this idea that it's a kind of lonely fun. How do we make it more interactive at the table then? Why don't we pick a game and figure out how to make that more interactive at the table?
So I think I don't have a game yet. I mean, I think anytime you make it more interactive is when you start crisscrossing.
Yeah, I think so too.
Right. So
Yeah. Take a page out of the Fate thing and
Fate
tie yourself to
the
somebody.
Fate Trio is a really good version of this.
It is
right?
it's pretty solid.
Yeah, it's not too long.
It's a pretty good model for it too, if you want to use it other places.
Yeah, and it also actually does the thing you really love, which is it merges story and mechanics
Yeah,
because
it
they're
generates an
aspects.
aspect.
Yeah. So yeah, I think crisscrossing is probably the best way to make this more interactive.
The thing that the Fate Trio doesn't do, at least in Fate Core, like other games do a better job of helping define some of those things, is that it gets a little too wibbly wobbly and it's not focused enough. So you can get not the best kinds of stories. I've seen it happen a lot of times where somebody talks about a thing and then somebody jumps in on that, and then somebody wants to jump in on something surrounding that.
Yeah.
And that you don't get what it's actually intending to do.
You know which one doesn't have mechanical impact, but also is a fun backstory. I don't know. It falls on the border of backstory life path kind of thing. It's probably more backstory, I think, now that I think about it, because it's named backstory cards.
Oh yeah, look at that.
Yeah, we were just talking about that in the chat room.
Yeah, Ryan fucking Macklin's backstory cards.
I am fucking back.
They're more interactive.
They're more interactive, and they have a much better chance of including multiple people.
Yep.
Yeah.
And they're tactile.
They're tactile, and they're small scale. It's a fixed number because you have like the grid and all that stuff to fill in. Yeah, I've used backstory cards for exactly that, right? To create a quick backstory. But I think backstory leads to a little more group bonding than it does fleshing out character backgrounds.
Sure. But that's in a lot of ways to me. Well, yeah,
Useful.
I guess so.
Useful.
It's useful. But
Yes, it's
if it creates the sort of like the life path of the group, how they got to that point, that also is a thing.
Yeah.
You made that joke about worlds don't have life paths. I'm like, but they I mean, we could talk
worlds
about
have histories. They absolutely have histories, and Microscope is a great history simulator.
Uh-huh.
There are other collaborative world building activities that people do and like games have, right? Like Dresden has the city creation. Yeah.
which is the setting creation for Fate Core, which is the same thing.
The Hood has the map creation, right? Where you create the map for the neighborhood.
Those are essentially setting life paths. That's what they are.
Yeah.
They build this history of a place up to a
I know
point.
I'm so hesitant to use the word life path, but yes.
I mean, it's
It's a life path if you're talking about. So it's a life path. It's life path like if you are not just naming things like.
so it
In the
has,
fate, you have to have some sort of. It has to create some sort of linear time
well,
passage.
hence Microscope, right? Like it
Right.
has events.
Yeah.
It has things that have happened.
Yes.
Like Microscope is a very good example based on our definition.
Right. Microscope creates, but Microscope does that for a history.
Yeah, it's not actually intending to do it for games, but I've heard plenty of people who use that
No,
to build their settings
I used a
out.
modified version of Microscope to create the comic book timeline for my
Masks
the
game.
Masks
Yep.
campaign, and the amount of gold that came out of that I think it was 1 or 2 mornings of activity. The amount of story gold that came out of doing the Golden Age, the Silver Age, the Iron Age, and the Modern Age. I basically got almost my entire campaign from that activity. So
Yeah.
it is definitely a value. And like I said, we used we used kind of a light version of Microscope to make that happen.
So the thing that I would like to see, and I think this exists in a couple of games. I'm sure somebody will be able to mention 1 or 2, and I think I've seen it before. But I like the idea like we have characters, they play a thing, like they do a thing, like an adventure of some sort, a scenario of some sort, and then there is a period of time that passes between that adventure and the next one, and that is where a round through the life path mechanics comes through. It's like, here's what we did over these past 12 months or these past 9 months.
Oh, I wouldn't even want that. I mean, yes, I like that. That's a passage of time mechanic. That's not, again, not a life path thing because we're not talking about the history of the character.
Sure, but it will provide that history of the character in that period of time. That's my point.
But I think what would be even so I like exactly what you're saying. I will offer a parallel one.
Sure.
What if you had a deck of events, life events, and you play like your first mission, whatever.
Or a chart of life events, because we can just roll dice then.
Sure, but I'm going to go with cards on
I
this
know
because I
you
like
want
cards.
cards.
But we get to we finish the first mission.
Uh-huh.
Everybody's kind of knows their character a little better, and then everybody gets dealt a life event, and it's like cool, like answer this for yourself, right? And now we're going to incorporate this in the game.
Also, interestingly, like answer this for yourself, and based on that, and the answer that you give, you'll get one of these benefits.
Sure,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
Because that'll tie in a
And
mechanic to it.
answer this for yourself. Tell us who else from the group may have been involved.
Any of those things,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
Like those could all be different cards.
Yeah, and what would be fun is that you just don't do it at the beginning of the, you don't do it at the beginning of character creation. You do it like a couple times early on in the game to kind of set, like as your character becomes more set, and because this is the other part. If you answer those questions early, your campaign world is more abstract, right? Like there's a booster, like there's booster gangs, there's this, there's that. But if you've played 4 sessions and answer that question, suddenly you're like, oh yes, it's a booster gang, but oh no, it's the blood sharks, the guys that we threw down with like 2 missions ago, right? Like it's that thing, right?
Yeah.
Because like once your campaign has progressed and you've created more content,
Well, now these generic ideas can be reincorporated.
and they can be reincorporated into things that are even more meaningful because they're like they have meaning in the game.
And
Yes.
this is the thing with campaigns built on each other. And this will give sort of like a different look at the play experience too. Instead of just always being in that like camera zoomed in mode, we
Yep.
can zoom out a little bit and have these different style experiences.
And we actually see that in TV shows. Sorry. do you
No, I
want-
was just gonna say I've kind of been doing that in the last bunch of games that I've been playing, just on my own.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, I leave gaps in my backstory, and then when something comes up in play, I'll be like, "Ooh, that's a good thing that I can tie into something to add a little thing to my."
You know what game's got this? Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition.
Does it?
They have this mechanic called downtime. Like
Okay.
you spend units of downtime to do stuff between adventures.
Yeah,
I didn't
but-
even think about it.
But that's. I mean, we're way off Lifepath at this point.
We are
if
way
you're,
off.
If you're doing stuff between adventures, that's the same thing as Blades in the Dark. That's not. How did you get your? That's not how. How did you come to be here? How did you get your abilities? That's like, what are you doing between adventures? Like a number of games have that. And by the way, put a pin in that.
Well, the only difference-
Let's talk about downtime. Let's talk about downtime.
The only
mechanics.
difference is then is one of them is random, about random events that occur with your character that you don't have any control over, and the other one is about spending a resource to do a thing.
Right, but
Which are very different things.
right, but a life path is about your character's past. A downtime mechanic.
Okay, so that's an addition to the definition then.
Right, a downtime mechanic. No, I'm pretty sure my definition said it's about it's about all the things that happened to your character before your player took agency of them.
But there's also nothing saying, like what I just said I did, that during your downtime, you take something that's already happened in the game, use that as inspiration and say, yeah, I'm going to do this thing during downtime because of this thing that happened when I was a kid, whatever. Like you're fleshing out part of your
Yeah.
backstory
Yes.
by incorporating something from the campaign that's happened since you started playing. So you're doing 2 different things there. You're using downtime as stuff that's happening between sessions, but you're also going, hey, here's a slot in my time, in my life path that wasn't filled in. Now here's a thing that happened to me
Sure.
that helped formulate who I am.
Yeah,
today.
Except-
you're giving context.
Yeah,
to
It's
your
not
downtime.
really a life
According,
path, but
according to our definition, it's not because you have agency over it. Like that's an important part of the definition. If you don't have agency, then it's a life path. If you do have agency, then it isn't a life path.
Right.
okay.
I mean, according to what we're stating.
Right. Again, there's no absolutes on this definition.
Yeah,
right?
so
we always need a working definition.
I'm super interested in the idea game design wise of like, well, I have this 9-month gap of time
Sure.
between this adventure and this adventure.
What happens?
Yeah, let's figure out.
So
Like
by
an event happens, but we don't want to play the event out completely. We
Correct.
just want to have that shorter.
Yep. So for that, I will say let's put a pin in that because we can talk about downtime mechanics.
Absolutely.
Because we have a couple great games that have great downtime mechanics.
We do, but I think we could probably invent some really cool ones based off the things we just talked about.
Yeah. So yes, I think that would be cool. I will tell you a place where Senda and I were talking about looking at Lifepath for in a design space was one of the things we wanted to do with the Ditch Lilies was that with all 4 of the women in the Ditch Lilies right now in the playtest mode, they're very locked down. Like I've defined all their tags.
Sure.
Right? What we were talking about is, wouldn't it be fun if we could do a light life path kind of flowchart that was like Lily went to college and and then you pick like she dropped out she dropped out in her sophomore year to go on the road, or she finished college, whatever. And then when you pick that, it leads to, cool, put this tag under your onstage persona.
Because it lets you create your character a little bit more.
It lets you. It lets
gives
you
you some choice points for creating.
Yeah,
creating
it just kind of guides you a little into saying, like, look, most of Lily is locked down,
Yeah.
but here's some things that you can make yourself.
So instead
And-
of playing a completely pre-generated character,
Right.
you get to take some agency over customizing it a little bit
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
make it yours.
It's a very video game thing to do, which is a
Yeah.
really cool idea to put into a role playing game.
Yeah, we thought it might just be fun, but to make it mechanically meaningful, when you pick one of those,
You get a tag for
It-
your
Well, that's what I
It
mean.
put- yeah, it puts that
I'm
tag
with you.
in.
Like
Yeah.
you do a story thing that gives you a mechanical thing.
Yeah.
yes,
Like you pick a story like it's
yeah,
there's a I forget what there's like a program. Here's a branching tree. When you pick this branch, you get this thing on your character sheet. When you pick this branch, you get this thing on your character sheet.
Yep.
It's like the burning wheel thing, right?
very much so.
Yeah. So there you go. I think that's a cool idea. Love
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. So that's still a thing I want to explore. Like, I still think that would be fun to explore, and I think it would be fast enough that since the rest of the character's created, you basically be like, cool, here's what I want you to do. Here's on the back of the sheet, there's a character background. Go through, check the boxes for
couple
the answers
things.
you want, write the tags on the front of your character sheet, and we're off and playing.
Yep.
All right. Well, I think that's enough about this topic. We've explored it pretty intensively.
Yeah.
Yeah, are we okay with it? Like, I think I liked how you summed it up at the end, which is the agency part, right? So if it's before agency,
Yeah.
Before you have complete agency, because we're talking about two levels of agency here. We're talking about the dice are randomly making us choose things, or the cards are randomly making us choose things,
Right.
or we're getting questions asked to us and we're answering them.
Yeah.
But they are very specific questions.
yeah,
Like those are the kind of life path ideas that we're talking about, which is very different from having agency over that, which is the difference between that and a backstory, right?
Yep.
yeah.
I mean, a personally created backstory.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
if I just make up a backstory, like we just we were playing.
There's no mechanical anything to that.
No, we were playing your playtest game, and I was just like, my character needs a backstory, and I
Yeah.
just literally flipped over the character sheet
And
and
scribbled some
started.
stuff
I
out.
wrote like 2 paragraphs
Sure.
of like how did she come to be, and then I was like, that's good enough. I've got enough hook to start playing this character.
All right. Anything in the chat room, Bob? Before we move on.
I think we're good for now.
Well, and I guess I should do this. Hey, look, we are in the conversation corner. We're going to talk about a bunch of stuff, at least for 15 minutes, and then we'll get out of here and go to the after show.
Let's go to the after show.
But first, you bought a new computer.
I did. I bought so I needed to buy a new computer. I was in need for one, and I really wanted a Mac. I have Macs at work, and I'm very comfortable with them now. So I bought myself the new Mac Mini.
They are tasty.
It's
'Cause they're
super.
apples.
It's super cute, right? Like it's just this.
It's
little,
just like a little adorable thing.
It is. It's this little box.
You just dress it up, take it out with you.
Yeah, I throw
it
it
in
in
your
I can
pocket.
throw it in my pocket. Right? No, but it's this little box, right? Like it's nothing spectacular. I did not go off.
It
the-
only looks not spectacular on the outside.
Oh,
On the inside, it's very spectacular.
No, I could have paid you could pay a lot more money. Like I could have got to like 256 gigs of RAM or something. It was ridiculous. Like I bought a modest one. I need it for my day-to-day stuff, which I was looking through my stuff. I'm like, 90% of my stuff is web-based. Like I was looking at it. I'm like, do I even need to install Office on this? I'm like, I don't think so. Like, I don't use Office for almost anything.
I actually use it a lot more now.
Do I need to put Creative
Cloud on
Cloud?
there?
I totally need to put Creative Cloud on it. Creative Cloud, Google, and that kind of stuff. But anyway, it arrives on Monday, so I'm really excited. And I'm heading into Christmas vacation with a new computer to configure, which is like always one of my favorite things.
Feels to me like my precious, my precious.
I mean, I was looking at it, I'm like, I don't think this thing's actually going to take that much time to set up. Like, I don't think it's that complicated. Download a couple browsers, install a few things, and then I'm going to be like, it's basically ready to go. The biggest thing I have to figure out is how to get my Minecraft stuff onto it without losing key bindings, waypoints on my maps, and shit like that. Like, that is, whatchamacallit. that is for sure. Moving everything else on there is trivial, right? Like install cloud sync for Google, all of the encoded stuff will come down.
Yeah.
But I'm sitting here like, okay, how do I get this shit out of Twitch? Not out of Twitch. How do I get it from the instance of Twitch on my laptop into the instance of Twitch on my Mac? And I think the answer is zip it and copy it, but we'll find out. But anyway, that's what I'm doing.
We'll find out in 2 weeks when Phil comes and tells us how it works.
Yes.
Yeah.
Booyah.
And I've been reading this game called Transit.
Where we are AI ships. Well, not me, but people are AI.
You could be an AI ship if you wanted to be. It's you are AIs implanted in ships going around doing space things.
With meat people inside you.
With meat people inside you that you are somewhat responsible
This
for.
infestation of meat suits.
Yes. So, that's me.
We'll hear more about that in the future too, because they'll be playing.
Yes.
Yeah, Rob, I'll hit you up on Slack about more transit stuff.
Booyah.
Bob, you got anything?
Yeah, so
You can talk about Crisis if you want.
no, that's all right. I'll let you talk about Crisis. No, I'm pissing off everybody I work with.
Why?
Because the boss decided like a week ago, like I'm gonna turn on a radio station that plays all Christmas music all the time. And I didn't want to get Whampocalypsed, and I did day one. Boom.
On December 1st,
Out. Gone. And then I just like it takes me forever to get into the Christmas mood. Like I don't usually get into the Christmas spirit until like Christmas Eve.
I went shopping last night. It was fun.
It's like, so I'm like, being a grumpy Gus at work, being a grumpy old man, and like a Christmas song will come on, and I'll be like, mocking it and stuff. And
I'm not grinching out
I'm
for
like-
like the first time in like 2 or 3 years.
So
Like I'm pretty
I'm like-
solid with Christmas this year.
They're
fucking
they're
love
being good
Christmas.
sports
I know you
about
do.
it, but
We know you love Christmas.
I fucking love
I'm surprised you're not
Phil
wearing a
loves
Santa
Christmas.
Claus hat right now.
ho ho ho.
Yeah, I've done it before.
Humbug.
I've done it. But I used to have a Santa Claus.
friggin'
I've worn one on the show before, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah,
Probably.
I used to have a Santa Claus cap.
I actually dressed up as Santa Claus once.
Did you?
For some kids.
I totally could dress up as
to
Santa
do the whole
Claus.
handing out presents at a party.
All right,
Yeah.
we're doing
Oh, that's
phrasing in the
cute. Yeah,
chat
it's
room.
fun.
All right.
What's going on in the chat room?
Like Ryan, I wear
Like, right,
myself
I weigh
every
myself
day.
every day. I mean,
Crazy, man.
Every day is Wham Day.
big.
I have not been Whampocalypse. I could have swore I was going to get Whampocalypse last night because I was out Christmas shopping
Yeah.
for fun, for the funsies. I went out shopping for the funsies because you can do all that stuff from Amazon these days.
Yes.
You totally
Sometimes
can.
it is actually fun.
I really want to do. I saw a video on it, and now I want to. I totally want to do it next year. Which was there were some people who set up like little snack stations next to their door for the Amazon people.
Oh, that's cool.
That were like, hey, if you're dropping off,
interesting.
stuff, like grab yourself a little bottle of water and a bag of chips or something.
That's
like
pretty slick.
You're working really hard, like because those Amazon people are working like nonstop for the next like week, right? And people
are.
I just like I saw it now and I was like, oh, I got to do that next year. Like next year, I'm just putting a little basket out in a note and be like, help yourself, man. Like you've been doing a good. Like thanks for all the help.
It's been a weird year. We're gonna talk about Christmas stuff instead of the other things. This is more fun now.
Yeah,
now we're
Christmas-
having fun. Christmas
yeah,
stuff.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. So my son's 18, and
Yep.
he's not like he still likes toys and things like that because he's autistic and he's pretty rough on the spectrum as far as like his autism goes. But he has a billion toys anyway, like little dudes that he likes to set up, little folks that he likes to set up all over the place. But he doesn't need any more of that stuff. So like this year's like, what do I get him for Christmas? So I asked his mother, and she gave me some ideas, and I got a few of those things. But then I'm like, what does this kid need? So I'm like, got him his own glass. It's gonna be etched with like C-3PO and R2-D2 on it.
Nice, because he's a big Star
He's a big
Wars.
Star Wars fan. Got him a cool shirt that says Jedi Knight on the back of it. Got him a pair of like his pajama pants. He ripped them the other day, the pair that he has
Yeah.
here. So I bought him a new pair of pajama pants. A few more things that we're gonna pick him up between now and then. He's got these. Actually, he likes Christmas ornaments a lot. So there's a set of these Star Wars Christmas ornaments that all link up together. And they do
Nice.
things when they're linked together.
Oh, that's cool.
So
yeah, he'll dig that.
My mom got him the Y-wing, and I got him Vader's TIE Fighter.
Sweet.
And he's got like a dozen of the other ones that they
Yeah.
hang all up on the Christmas tree, and they link them together.
That's awesome.
So he'll like that. It's
I
gonna be a very
love-
Star Wars Christmas.
I love what you call it.
Christmas?
I love Christmas, but I love Christmas shopping. Like, I mean, we do it now on Amazon because the kids are old enough where, and I respect this, right? The kids are old enough where they want stuff and they're not 100% confident that mom and dad know the things they want. which I'm totally for, because that was me as a kid. Like, I never trusted my parents to know, like, which Transformer to get. And I used to get the Sears catalog out and, like, write down, like, I need you to get A, Optimus Prime. You know, he's on page 5, item B. Like,
Amazon wish lists have made it much easier.
Amazon wish lists are amazing. I will tell you a story about my dad. So my mother was so bad to my dad when he was when they got married. My mom would my mom wouldn't give him a Christmas list. Right? She's like, you know, you're married to me, you know me, you should be able to pick out stuff for me. Which I'm like, in retrospect, I'm like, Mom, that is just awful. My dad has no retail skills whatsoever.
None.
So one year, he's like, I'm going out shopping for your mother. I'm going to the mall. And I'm like 17, and I'm like, oh my God. Like, he's going to the mall by himself. So he's gone for like 3.5 hours. And now my mom's panicking, right? Because she's like, what if something happened to him? Like, what if he drove, you know, like it was winter, right? So she's like, what if something happened to him? What if, like, he's dead or something? And I made him go to the mall. And I'm like getting ready to go to the mall. And he pulls into the driveway. And like, where, you know, my mother's like, where have you been or whatever? And, you know, he's got bags with him and stuff. Again, he's so not retail savvy that he walks into the mall and doesn't look to see what store is near the exit. So he like walked in and then didn't know which entrance he came in or which entrance to leave.
That's hilarious.
So it was also like, you know, 4 days before Christmas. So the parking lot is like
Jam-packed with cars.
Jam-packed. So it's not even like as the night wore on, you could spot your car. So he literally had to walk out a door and then walk around the mall parking lot until he found his truck. And I never felt worse for him because it was a catch-22. Because my mom didn't have like hobbies where you could buy her stuff. Like you had to buy her clothes. And I'm like, oh my God, you've sent this like
this poor person
you've
out
sent
into
this
the
poor man who doesn't know anything about shopping
into the jaws
to
of
go buy
the,
women's clothes.
into
Like,
the jaws of the terrible mall beast.
like, does he know what size you are? Like, did you give him any? Like, did you help him at all? Like, it was terrible. Like, I tell you this joke. I tell you this story, somewhat laughing, but like, my mom was really tough on my dad, which is why I am like, look, make a wish list, make a Christmas list. Like, I am not offended. My rule is I will always look at a list, and then I will always try to go get something myself. Mm-hmm. But I also like to get things that people want on their Christmas list.
Yeah.
Like, if you wanted it, you put it on the list. Like, I don't know. The part to me is like, I will always go off the Christmas list if I can, because it's a way of me being like, look, I do know what you like.
Jen is actually pretty bad at this too. Like, I'm like, what do you want for Christmas? She's like, I don't know.
Yeah. Like, I don't know is not a valid answer here.
Like then I have to like consult my knowledge of like the past year and be like,
right.
Okay, what has happened over the past year?
Like,
that
what
is,
TV show did she really like?
What does she really like? What are the things that she's been talking about a lot lately? Because they changes constantly.
Right. I'm a fan. Well, so the thing that I have to be careful of is that come November, I have to stop buying stuff for myself. Right? Because I don't want to accidentally
people.
Well, I don't want to accidentally buy something. Right. Like I don't want to buy something that I might have put on a Christmas list. So I get very good at like come November, I'm like, okay, if I want something, I'll buy it in January. Like, let's just see, like, let's see what shakes out.
That's why wish lists are good though, because like if people buy off your wish list, it counts it down.
Yes. I mean, I don't look at my wish list though, right? So that's the thing. Like once the way we do it in our family is like before Thanksgiving, you have to get your Amazon. This is like fantasy football. Before Thanksgiving, you got to get your wish list in order, and then you got to tell people, like, you got to give out the link to it, and then you don't look at your wish list again until January.
I guess. I cheat.
I don't, because I know I knew what I put on that list. If I look at that list, I'm like, I got this, I got this, I got this, I got this. One time when I was a kid, I found my Christmas presents, and it was such a letdown that I found them that I have never wanted to find my Christmas presents ever again.
That's funny.
I was like 8 years old, and I was hunting for Christmas presents, and I found this Nerf soccer ball in my mom's closet, and I knew I was getting it, and I was heartbroken because I knew what I was getting for Christmas.
You had gotten it, yeah.
And so I will never peak. I will never peak at Christmas lists.
All right. Why don't I know Bob's not here, but why don't we do some Patreon shoutouts and get out of here so that we can go to the after show?
That's fine.
All right. We can do this without Bob.
That was a very holly jolly.
Yeah, we'll talk some more about Christmas stuff in a second.
Sure.
So Patreon shoutouts. Let's do. Thank you so much, patrons, for patroning the show. I mean, we'll take your patronizing too, I suppose. Like, I mean, that's a thing. Like, if you feel like it, we understand.
Like we say on Pandas, thank you for supporting the show. If you can, and if you can't, we totally understand.
Oh, totally. We just like that you listen.
Yes, absolutely.
JT Evans, Jen Pixelscapes Gagney, Joseph Peralta, Kettle and Clock. I like the fact that there is a patron that has the name Kettle and Clock.
Kettle and Clock sounds to me like an 80s detective
TV show?
TV show, but they own they own a bed and breakfast. They own a bed and breakfast in Vermont.
Oh, that's pretty
And then
good.
they solve mysteries.
It's like the reboot of Murder, She Wrote.
Kind of, but
Yeah.
but it's a couple.
Uh-huh.
Like
and
it's
this town that's got like 10,000 people in it, but like somebody dies every week. So it's like
It's
the highest.
The Hellmouth is actually underneath this like little
The highest.
Vermont town.
Oh, so it's not supernatural then, right?
Sure, why not? Yeah.
Supernatural Murder, She Wrote in Vermont.
But Kettle and Clock is it's both the name of the inn and it's their last names.
Yeah.
Right? So
That's good. Mike Amer, Ninjabi, Rainmaker, Richard Ruane, Roy McLeod, Savannah Sizer, Scott Ryder, Sean P. Kelly, Steve Bissonette, Steve Radabaugh, The Tabletop Bellhop, Tad Leckman, T. Kustik, Theodore Atkinson, Victor Wyatt, and Zach Goins. And thank you, everybody, so much for listening. We greatly appreciate it.
If you are free Tuesday evenings at 8 p.m. Eastern, not next week, but the week after, come join us live on Twitch where you can chat with other listeners in the awesome chat room for life and ask us the occasional question.
You know, if you can't make it to the live show, you could check out this podcast. Do it.
Misdirected Mark, word scramble.
Thank you. You could check out this podcast each week wherever you get your podcasts. You can also take a listen to some of the other shows in the Misdirected Mark Network, such as Down with D&D, Bones and Obsidian, Pandas Talking Games, The Domecast, Janyu Hustle, She's a Super Geek, and Bonus Experience. You can and should also check out our sibling podcasts, The Tabletop Bellhop, The Knights of the Night, and The Always Amazing Gaming and BS. And if you want to check us out on Twitch, our actual play shows are The Bicons, 8:30 p.m. every other Sunday, and the FM Gamers, 7 p.m. every other Monday.
After you have rolled for your last iteration in the Scouts, and before you hit that mishap that leaves you maimed and disfigured, you can leave us some feedback. You can reach us directly via email at mmp@misdirectedmark.com. Hit us up on Twitter, the Twitter Roundup. The show, the network, is at Misdirected Mark. This guy over here is Robert M. Everson. That guy is the Light 101, and I am DNA Phil.
If you like what we do here and on the other shows in the Misdirected Mark Network, you can support our Patreon campaigns. MMP, Down with D&D, and Pandas Talking Games are at patreon.com/MMP. She's a Super Geek is at patreon.com/SassGeek. Zhangyu Hustle is at patreon.com/Zhangyu Hustle, and Bonus Experience is at patreon.com/Bonus Experience. Patrons of MMP, Down with D&D, and Pandas Talking Games get access to the after show, pre-production show notes, musical parodies, the Pandas Talking Games bonus outtakes, and other special releases.
Well, this has been a pre-Christmas Misdirected Mark production, which is the media arm of the Almost New Year's Encoded Designs. Merry, happy Kwanzaa, what is it?
Happy holidays, everyone.
Chris,
I wanted to say the other thing, mic drop.
We out!